Welcome to Social Justice Activism Week 3. Hopefully you all are well underway in your reading assignments for Week 3. So I'm going to go directly into the lecture, and I'm also going to do a brief recap right here at the beginning. So, we have talked about the definitions of social movements in Week 1 and Week 2. We've touched on the goals of social movements, and I just want to briefly recap. The goals of social movements can be extremely vague and ill-defined, especially for unorganized conflicts, expressing discontent without clear proposals from society, such as making things better for farm workers or making poor communities in urban areas more clear. So, social movement organizations are more likely to articulate clear goals or proposals. Now, social movements, different factions of the same movement may disagree about specific goals. So, for example, let's talk about the different branches of the women's movement. We're going to get directly to the lesbian feminist movement. And we know, or we're going to really dissect that there are different factions within this huge movement. A complex movement generally may have specific and even competing goals within a broader sense that will make it more difficult for social change as it relates to its orientation. So let's talk about inequality issues. Oppressed people who form separate economically and politically weak communities, such as many ethnic and racial groups of societies, they all tie to specific dominant groups, such as class movements, reactive responses to threats, longer term solidarity when it comes to institutionalized movements seeking state power. These may be tied, and they can be tied to deep social divisions. Let's talk about a segment that we're going to focus on this lecture when we talk about people in society who experience discrimination, such as women, gay people, the disabled, religious organizations, and minorities. Typically integrate with other groups. They vary in class, position, and different levels of economic deprivation. And group members may even disagree about whether portions of society are even oppressed. So I just wanted to share those nuggets of information to all of you and just give you some food for thought when you're writing and putting your thoughts together in your reflection papers that are due this week. The lesbian feminist movement is a cultural movement that was most vigorous during the 1960s, the 70s, and 80s, including present time today. The lesbian feminist movement is a subset and collective identity submerged networks, that's one of our key concepts, of feminism that emerged in the mid to late 20th century in conjunction with the women's movement and the gay rights movement and also the sexual revolution. Lesbian feminists considered same-sex relationships legitimate and used their lesbian identity as a basis for community building and collective action. Lesbian feminism challenged the perception of heterosexuality and male supremacy as normal and presents alternate ways of thinking about gender and power. Lesbians played a prominent role in many new feminist organizations, helping to organize for equity in the workplace, the home, and in the courts. There are three waves of the subset of this particular movement, which is included in the women's movement. Now, the first wave of the women's movement came between 1840 and 1925. The main battles women fought for were for the right to vote, higher education, opportunities in the workplace, in different positions in the workplace, and the right to own property after marriage. Now, the second wave of the women's movement was between 1960 and 1995. So let's talk about radical feminism. This is also known as the women's liberation movement. Radical feminists believe that the oppression of women is the doorway, is the entry point for all other forms of oppression. Now, these feminists are very committed to equality and utilize many strategies and techniques to make their meetings equal for all that attend. These radical feminists wanted to raise attention about the oppression of women and to demand specific changes in where women stood in society and in relationships, particularly with men. Now, radical feminists often make big scenes such as protesting, beauty pageants, or having rallies in the streets. Lesbian feminism fights for women in all relationships to have the same rights to property, insurance, legal rights such as same-sex marriages, and they wanted the same rights as heterosexual people, heterosexual women. Now, these radical lesbian feminists basically fought to defend their own right for sexual orientation. Now, again, we talked in the beginning about subsets and submerged movements. Now, there are several sub-movements that have their own ideology within the overall feminist movement, and this, for example, is one, the lesbian feminist movement. Now, let's go back to radical feminism. Now, radical feminism is based on the idea that male-controlled capitalist hierarchies is the root of women's oppression. Now, unlike liberal or socialist feminism, radical feminism zeroes in on the root causes of women's oppressions from a patriarchal gender relationship, and feminists seek to abolish patriarchal relationships. Now, also, radical feminists believe that the only way to change the system of power is to really examine the underlying causes of oppression through revolutionary and radical means, and basically take direct action. Lesbian feminists explains these ideas into a mass movement for women's liberation, the movement that organized women at all levels, from large groups to small groups, and supported by a cadre of national publications, businesses, gatherings, networking with other organizations, and other social movements. Now, a domain of the broader feminist movement, lesbian feminism remained both connected to the larger struggle for women's liberation. Now, tactically, the lesbian feminist movement underscored its connection to the broader feminist efforts and emphasized community building among all women. Now, many of those in the movement believe that they established a revolutionary front line, which is the forefront of a broader political movement to create a more democratic society. Now, if society taught that women were inferior, then lesbians experienced the greatest persecution, took the biggest risks, and clearly protested, thus proving their commitment to gender equality. Now, by defining lesbian feminism as centrally important to feminism, lesbian feminists help bring greater recognition within the women's movement to those who identified as lesbian, and they promoted an environment that made it possible for women to name their desires and find stability between their personal and their professional lives and their radical ideals. Now, consequently, and at the same time, lesbian feminists were criticized, were ostracized for promoting conformity within the women's movement. And through their declaration that lesbians were fully mirrored feminists, their commitment was to women's liberation. Now, the third wave of the women's movement is still prominent today. It includes women of all backgrounds, from all racial identities and economic circumstances and situations. This wave is less focused and less developed, but there are 6 features that are a part of this third wave. The first feature, is recognizing differences among women, fighting for the rights of all women. Women are not just one huge, big, gigantic group. There are many differences between all women, including sexual orientation, class status, race, and abilities that all women have. Number 2 is building coalitions. That's where finding other groups to work with in the fight for women's rights. Alliances are built with men and other groups as well. The third part of the 6th part is engaging in everyday resistance. Now, the second wave passed a lot of laws giving rights to women and to people of other races. These laws are not being followed through on a personal level, and we can really see that when it comes to gay rights. Now, people still make racist and sexist jokes on a daily basis. Third wave feminists challenge all sexist and racist jokes, comments, cartoons, because it comes in many forms. And the next is being media savvy. Is really dissecting and really interpreting these messages through the media. Third wave feminists are able to use both media to learn information and also to really put the ideas out there. The next one is embracing aesthetics and consumerism. Now, feminists believe that women can be strong and sexy at the same time. It is not bad for women to buy fashionably savvy clothes and to look gorgeous. Feminists believe and encourage women to explore their sexuality for themselves and not for others. And the next one and the last set of the 6 is individualism. Third wave feminists focus on individual women having their own goals, their own identity, loving themselves. Women are very diverse and therefore there can't be one political agenda that fits all women. It is not a one size fits all type of model. Okay, class, this is the end of my talking and my lecture, but there are more slides for you to review the terms, the key concepts, a list of the video clips that you are to watch, which they will be posted on Blackboard, and also the discussion question. And then remember your reflection paper as well. So I'm going to let you all carry on reviewing the rest of the presentation. I will see you online. If you have any questions or any concerns, please email me and I will respond back to you in the time allotted as far as my response time. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll see you online.